The streets of Seoul had changed under martial law. The once vibrant hum of the city was now muted by the presence of military checkpoints and the constant surveillance from towering cameras that seemed to watch every move. The sky, once clear and open, now felt like a cage. Every corner held a whisper of fear, and every day felt like a battle for something as simple as freedom. Mina sat at the corner of the cafe, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the rim of her coffee cup. The low hum of conversation around her barely reached her ears. Her mind was elsewhere, as it often was, hidden within the boundaries of the small, unassuming apartment where she kept her secret. It was a place where she could be herself, where she could paint. But today, even her sanctuary felt suffocating. The martial law had imposed curfews, curtailing movement after dark, and surveillance on nearly every activity. Mina's art, once a source of joy, had become a quiet rebellion. Every brushstroke was an act of defiance, yet every stroke carried a weight she couldn't escape. She had never considered herself an activist, but in this time, it was impossible not to be. Her father worked for the government. He believed in the system. He had always praised the order that martial law had brought, arguing that it was necessary for the survival of the nation. At dinner the night before, he had lectured her about the importance of loyalty. His words had felt like a shackle tightening around her chest. He couldn't see what she saw. The world had changed, and the boundaries were drawn tighter with every passing day. A customer approached the counter, shaking her from her thoughts. "Mina, can I get another coffee?" the woman asked, a forced smile on her face. Mina nodded, quickly preparing the drink, her movements automatic. The cafe was a safe place in the eyes of the regime, a neutral ground where people could go about their business, unaware of the world of secret art exhibitions and underground resistance that was beginning to grow in the shadows. Once she handed the coffee to the customer, Mina slipped into the back room of the cafe, where she had her supplies. This was where her secret came to life, hidden from prying eyes. A small canvas lay on the table, half painted, the colors bleeding into one another as they formed shapes that defied the regime. Her art was no longer about beauty, it was a statement. Every piece she created carried her frustrations, her hopes for a future beyond the government's control. She heard a knock at the door. Mina jumped, her heart racing. She quickly covered the canvas, then opened the door to find a familiar face, Sujin, a friend who shared her passion for art. "You have to be more careful," Sujin whispered, her eyes darting around as she entered. Mina sighed, stepping aside. "I know, but it's the only way I can keep going. If I don't paint, I don't know who I am anymore." Sujin gave a knowing look. She had been one of the few people Mina trusted with the truth. "You know the risks. You can't keep hiding forever, Mina." Mina looked down at her hands, stained with paint. "I don't want to be another voice silenced." Sujin reached out and gently pulled the canvas cover away. "Then you must let them see." Mina hesitated but nodded. The weight of the world seemed to press on her shoulders, but in this moment, there was something freeing about sharing her truth, even if it was with just one person. She smiled faintly, glancing at the unfinished painting. The colors on the canvas bled into a chaotic swirl of defiance, a protest against the silence forced upon them. "One day," Mina whispered, "they'll hear us." Sujin nodded. "But until then, we have to be silent in the ways that matter." June's bookstore was a hidden gem in the heart of Seoul, tucked away on a quiet street that felt untouched by the looming presence of martial law. From the outside, it was an unassuming space, old wooden shelves filled with dusty books, some so worn that the titles were barely legible. But to those who knew, it was a sanctuary. June wiped the counter clean as the bell above the door jingled, signaling a customer. It was just past noon, the time when the military had begun to enforce curfews more strictly. The streets outside had emptied, and the only sounds now were the muffled footsteps of soldiers patrolling nearby. The tension was palpable, but inside the bookstore, there was a strange sense of peace, like an island in a storm. "You're late," June said with a half-smile as Sujin stepped into the shop, her eyes scanning the room quickly to make sure no one was watching. "I was just finishing something," Sujin replied, lowering her voice. She handed him a small bundle wrapped in brown paper. "I brought the books." June took the package carefully, feeling the weight of its contents. These were not ordinary books. They were banned filled with ideas, philosophies, and critiques of the government. They were the heartbeat of his underground resistance, and they had to be handled with the utmost care. Good, June said, glancing out the window, his eyes narrowing at the sight of a soldier walking past. Let's get this meeting started. The small group gathered at the back of the bookstore, people who, like him, believed in something more than the government's control. There was Hyan, a former journalist who had lost his job for writing articles deemed dangerous, and Min Seo, a student protester now in hiding from the authorities. They all came together, quietly, every week, to discuss books, art, and philosophy, their form of resistance in a world where every thought and action was monitored. You're going to have to be more careful, June warned the group, his voice low. The military's tightening its grip. They've already started raiding places in the districts nearby. It's only a matter of time before they start looking for us. Hyan raised an eyebrow. We've been careful, June, but if we don't keep pushing, there'll be nothing left to fight for. I know, June replied, his voice heavy, but we have to remember what's at stake. One wrong move and we all get caught. As the conversation continued, Mina slipped quietly into the back room, having arrived unnoticed. She stood there for a moment, hidden in the shadows, listening to the voices of people she had never met but whose hearts beat in time with her own. There was a sense of solidarity here, of purpose, a quiet, shared understanding that even in the face of overwhelming oppression, they could still make a difference. June noticed her presence first. His eyes met hers, and he offered a small, knowing smile. He had seen her before, though their paths had never truly crossed until now. You're Mina, right? He asked, his voice soft but clear. Mina nodded, stepping forward, her hands trembling slightly. I wanted to meet you. I heard about your bookstore, about the meetings. I need to be part of this. I want to help. The room went silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. June studied her for a long moment. He had seen countless faces come through his doors, people who were scared, lost, or desperate. But there was something in her eyes that told him she wasn't just seeking refuge. She was seeking a cause. You've already been helping, June said quietly. Your art, your exhibitions, they inspire others. But this is different. Once you're in, there's no turning back. Mina's heart raced. She had been living in fear, but this was different. This was a choice. I'm ready, she said, her voice firm despite the uncertainty that swirled in her chest. June nodded, his expression softening. Then welcome to the fight. Kyung's boots echoed against the empty street as he walked his usual patrol route, the weight of his uniform pressing down on him. The city felt more suffocating than ever. He had been a part of the military for years, enforcing orders without question. But lately, something had begun to gnaw at him, a quiet unease that he couldn't shake. He passed a small bookstore, its lights dimmed but flickering with life from within. He had seen this place before, the one with the forbidden books. His superiors had ordered him to keep an eye on places like this, but something stopped him. He knew that the people inside weren't just selling novels. They were selling ideas, dangerous ideas. Kyung stopped and looked through the window. Inside, a small group of people sat huddled together, talking quietly. He couldn't hear their words, but he could sense the defiance in the air. It wasn't the first time he had seen such gatherings, but today, something felt different. The faces inside were familiar, and his heart skipped a beat when he noticed Mina, the young woman who had been part of the underground art scene. She was sitting with June, the bookstore owner. His mind raced, his loyalty to the regime pulling him in one direction, and his growing doubts pulling him in another. He couldn't deny the truth he had seen. The regime was suffocating the very soul of the people. He had watched people suffer, seen how fear had taken over their lives. But to act against the regime, that was unthinkable, wasn't it? Kyung turned away, his stomach twisting in knots. He had always believed in order, in the righteousness of his cause. But now, with every passing day, his role in this system felt less certain. The doubt was growing too loud to ignore. As he walked away, he made a decision, one that could change everything. He would no longer be a passive observer. He would take a stand. The question was, where would that stand lead him?